What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Down Once More. Matt here, and on this week's episode, I am going to be reviewing the 24-25 national tour production of Dear Evan Hansen. So Rayleigh and I have already reviewed Dear Evan Hansen on the podcast, so the movie version of it, and in there we talk about some of the differences between the stage Broadway version and the movie production. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to cover a little bit on this review, but for a more in-depth conversation on the movie, the musical as a whole, go check out that episode. I'll try to link it in the bio and the description so you can find that there. But this new production of Dear Evan Hansen that kicked off not too long ago is starring Michael Fabisch as Evan Hansen. And just first things first on this review, I want to give a shout out to Michael Fabisch because he did absolutely fantastic in the role as Evan Hansen. So a little bit of backstory on my history with the musical. If you haven't watched our previous review, I want to touch base on here. I started listening to the soundtrack of Dear Evan Hansen shortly after the Broadway cast recording was released. I fell in love with the songs, the music, and the message behind some of the waving through a window and you will be found really spoke to me. I'm actually not wearing it currently, but I almost always wear a necklace, and it's got two sayings on it from musicals that really speak to me. One is You Will Be Found from this musical, and the other is Fear or Love from Tick, Tick, Boom, which is another one of my all-time favorite musicals. And so just those two lines from musicals really speak to me, especially You Will Be Found. When I first started listening to this musical, I was dealing with some stuff and just feeling just burdened, just weighed down. And the message of that song about just not being alone in what you're going through and how just kind of destigmatizing mental health a little bit really spoke to me. It just really touched me and hit me. And so I wanted to see the play as soon as I could when I had production. So I saw it was coming near me, and I had tickets for it for March 19th, 2020. So the week before the production, COVID shut everything down, did not get to see it live. I ended up coming back about an hour near me. Last year, I wasn't able to see it. And then this year, it is the show that kicks off the Broadway season at the theater near me. So this is the first production. If you've been following the podcast for a while, I review the Broadway shows that I see on the national tours at the theater near me. I have a Broadway season pass. This is kicking off the Broadway season. Next up, in 2 weeks' time, I will be seeing Back to the Future and reviewing that on the podcast. So make sure to stay tuned for that if you're interested. But Dear Evan Hansen, I saw the movie when it came out. I had mixed feelings on that. Rayleigh and I got in depth on that. I also share a lot of the same thoughts as Hannah Bales. She's one of my favorite YouTube channels. She's a vocal teacher. She does breakdowns and analyzes different vocal performances and also does kind of like reaction videos, reviews. And she has 2 hour long one of Dear Evan Hansen, but it's entertaining and worth a watch. I think there's a lot of talk about kind of digging into some of the specifics of Dear Evan Hansen, and Rayleigh and I talked about it a little bit as well, where some of the portrayals of how people react to, I guess trigger warning on this play, this musical deals with suicide. So I think there have been a lot of very nuanced discussions that happen around the subject matter and how they approach it and how Evan approaches and handles everything in this story. But I think one thing about this musical is even though it focuses on Evan and what they're going through, he's never... Yes, he's a little bit of a sympathetic character and what he's going through, but it's never portrayed as him necessarily being a good guy or his actions and what he did being good. he justifies it in his head, and he kind of reacts out of a little bit of panic and his anxiety with the Murphys, right? And then he's having these voices telling him what to do, from Jared in the beginning about how he should react about what they believed in the letter. And then later on in the musical, the kind of not disembodied, but kind of his portrayal, the voice of Connor in his head that he has conversations with. We talked about it in our review, but that's one thing in the stage musical that is missing in the movie is Evan's dialogue with Connor. In the musical, the stage version, he shows up multiple times. He has a couple songs, which in the movie, him singing in Sincerely Me still exists. That number still is there, and which it should be. It's one of the most fun songs in the musical, and you can't really do it without Connor in that and how that portrays. Very entertaining, very fun, one of the best songs in the musical. But the stage version has the song Disappear, which starts with Connor singing to Evan about no one deserves to be forgotten, no one deserves to fade away. And I really like that song and the message that it portrays. But it also does kind of show kind of the selfish motivations a little bit behind Evan and everything he kicks off with the Connor project, where it's kind of he's seeing a little bit of himself and noticing himself maybe potentially fading away, not mattering, just kind of the validation of those thoughts he originally has about at the beginning. You don't really matter. Nothing you do really matters. You're just going to fade away and people are going to forget about you. You're just like Connor. And in the movie version, it is replaced with the anonymous ones sung by Amanda Stenberg, who plays Alana in the movie. And I really liked Anonymous ones. I think it makes it into my top, I can't say 3 because there's 3 songs I like better, but probably top 5 songs of the musical as a whole, if you look at both the movie and the stage version together. And I really like that song and the message of that one. It also makes the character of Alana in the movie a lot more sympathetic, and you kind of understand what she's going through a bit more. The stage version of Alana, while the actress who portrayed her was fantastic, she was portrayed by McKenna Jackson, but I thought she did a really good job. But the character of Alana in the stage version, I thought sucks. She is very just kind of a lot more opportunistic. And there's a few lines and moments, like at the end of Waving Through a Window, she's a little bit of like almost like a reprise snuck in there where she's singing the lines too. And that's your first hint that she's going through these things as well. But then she ends up telling Evan, like, these are the things I dealt with, don't want to be forgotten. That's why I care so much about the Connor project. But the way she inserts herself and just tries to take on so much with it, there's something about how it's done in the stage version that's a lot more unsettling to me. Whereas in the movie version, it unpacks with the anonymous ones. I don't love the dialogue and writing her and Evan's conversation before that, where they're just naming all the different Medicaid. I don't know. Maybe some people care for that. For me, the dialogue in that scene is weird, but the song I absolutely love. Yeah, and just that also has very powerful line in that one. Like, the parts we can't tell, we carry them well, but that doesn't mean they're not heavy. That kind of talks about those people who, on the outside, you're portraying that you're strong, that everything is okay. That doesn't mean that what you're dealing with isn't valid, isn't legitimate. It's not just weighing you down, burying you under the stress, and that what you're dealing with is just so much that you feel like you can't bear it. I really like that message, and that is worked a little more heavy-handedly, for lack of a better word, into that musical to show everything that Alana is dealing with a little more. And so I felt like that was just a thing that's lost in the stage version that makes her character a little more unlikable in the stage version. But musical as a whole, I was so glad I finally got to see this live, because The music, Pasek and Paul's, just everything with this. I love this soundtrack. It is one that I still listen to regularly. And I am so glad I got the opportunity to see Good For You live. Good For You is one of my favorite songs in the musical, top 3. I think I actually, I probably go Waving Through a Window, Words Fail, Good For You, and then You Will Be Found. That's probably my top 4 order there. And so Good For You being taken out of the movie upset me. I also feel like there was no reason for that song to be cut from this movie. You essentially have the same conversation between Heidi and Evan, but it is just lacking the emotion of this song and kind of a little bit of the just... we talked about in our review what they did to the characters of Evan and Connor's mom in the movie. I feel like by cutting out Anyone Have a Map and then taking out Good For You just really hurts those characters' development in the show, and we don't get as much of a time to see them shine. Okay, so I was editing and realized there was one point about Anybody Have a Map being cut that I was going to call out on here. Not having seen the stage play before, I didn't really know what all came before that number kicking off the show. And I have to say, even though I was disappointed the song was cut from the movie, and I think that you lose a lot of the backstory and kind of motivation and character development for Heidi and Cynthia, the moms, I understand why in the movie they would want to flow directly into Waving Through a Window. Because in the play, it opens with Evan sitting on his bed, working on his letter, trying to type it out. There's some notes from Waving Through a Window playing in the background. And then eventually, so there's some dialogue there. And then you get into Anybody Have a Map. So I can understand why they just want to kick it off directly into Waving Through a Window instead of kind of that little bit of kind of clunky exposition heavy dialogue setting up what's going on with the letters and the therapist and Evan and his emotional mindset and everything like that. I understand why in the movie you just want to get into directly into one of your more popular songs. I'm still disappointed that we lose Anybody Have a Map, but I understand it a little bit more seeing how it plays out in the stage production. So just wanted to add that note in here, and now back to the rest of the episode. But Good For You is so powerful, and I love that song live. And just showing that kind of the culmination of things where things start really just spiraling for Evan, and his lies are catching up with him, and how he's treating other people. You kind of see almost where he's transformed into the villain of this. Arguments if he was a villain from the very beginning, but really at this point is where it's more about himself and him being selfish and him just treating others poorly has really just come to the forefront. So good to see that song live. I still think, well, I get what they're going for with To Break in a Glove, and it was performed very well, but that song as a whole in the musical doesn't add a ton. Like, I get them that they're trying to show Larry's intentions from it, where he's like, you do the hard thing because it's the right thing and it's the right way to break in a glove, and it's saying more than just the baseball glove, right? Like, it's a little heavy-handed with it. That's telling you that's what it is. And so I get that we're trying to make the character of Larry a little more sympathetic as well. But that song doesn't do anything for me. I will say that emotionally wise, seeing You Will Be Found live had a really good impact, and I thought it was really well done. The part that was most impactful for me is when you see Larry during this, who's been very cold about everything. And then Zoe's talking about how, like, he didn't even cry at the funeral. He's never broken down. And when You Will Be Found and he's seeing the reaction to everyone, that's when he finally, like, breaks down and accepts it and is coming to grips with all the complicated emotions from how he treated Connor and Connor taking his own life and everything. And that part to me is what got me. It's the same within Hamilton, in its Quiet Uptown. The part that always gets me is when he's singing to Eliza, and then it goes like she takes his hand and Hamilton starts breaking down. Like both those things, those songs is what's powerful and just shocking. And I will say every person in this cast, this national tour, was fantastic. Like I said at the very beginning, Michael Fabisch was absolutely fantastic. I did not think, because I was only familiar really with Ben Platt singing these songs. I'd seen some clips of other ones. I'm a big Jordan Fisher fan as well, so I watched some videos of him singing the songs from it, which is such a unique and different take on it. And I thought he was so good. But Michael Fabisch, I did not think that anyone could match the kind of like anxiety-fueled, almost neuroticism that Ben Platt does, the awkward teenage loser nerd dealing with these things, and just the breakdowns and the anxiety as well as Ben Platt did. And while Ben Platt is Ben Platt and just fantastic, but Michael Fabisch with just so fucking talented, man. I think we are going to see him in multiple other things, performances. I had movies, TV, like his voice was incredible. Like I said, Ben Platt is leagues of his own. He originated this role. He looked a little odd in the movie, and so I'm like, man, Michael Fabisch's performance showed me like, yes, no one will be the same as Ben Platt, but they absolutely could have cast someone besides Ben Platt for this movie that looked more age appropriate and could have done the emotion and the vocals justice. Because, man, in Words Fail is one of my, like I said, it's one of the most, to me, one of the most powerful songs and one of my favorite songs in this musical. And at the end of it, the notes and the emotion that Evan is portraying and seeing this when just everything's crumbling around and he's losing everything. God, Michael Fabisch is so good at that. So good. And so just real shout out to him and this performance. This touring company is fantastic. So I'm just going to name off the other players in it, because everyone else should get their flowers, because everyone did really good too. So Heidi Hansen, Evan's mom, is played by Bre Cade. Larry Murphy is played by Jeff Brooks. Cynthia Murphy is played by Caitlin Sams. Connor Murphy was played by Alex Farrow. Jared Kleinman is played by Gabriel Vernon Nunang. And Zoe Murphy is played by Hatty Ryan King. And I already said Alana Beck is played by McKenna Jackson. And as I said, Evan Hansen is Michael Fabisch. Zoe Murphy, played by Hatty Ryan King, was also fantastic. Hattie did a fantastic job portraying her. Actually had a very similar sound and delivery as Caitlin Dever had in the movie, which Caitlin Dever was a bright spot in the movie to me. I didn't know that she had the vocal performance in her and even those like dramatic roles in her. So that's one thing that made me think like Caitlin Dever with the serious dramatic roles could actually be good as Abby in The Last of Us 2, part 2. So that's another section of the podcast. But this cast is fantastic. If you have the opportunity to go see this tour, I highly encourage you to go do it. The songs are powerful. It is very heavy subject matter. Like, this is not an upper. You don't really leave the musical feeling good either. Like, it's not that kind of musical. But the songs are so well written. The overall message and heart about not being alone is something that's very important. I think something else to recognize with this, and I think they kind of call it out and they're giving a little bit of a kind of, I don't know what I'm thinking, like not an essay on society, but how a lot of times when people have taken their own life and how people react to it, and then you get people trying to be like, oh, they were so great, or oh, I wish I knew them better, or oh, it's so sad they were so happy. You see these people that now that that person's gone, trying to act like they were the best friends or that person means so much to them when they didn't give them the time of day when they were alive. It's almost like trying to just latch on to the new cause, which they do talk about that in here, and kind of with Jared creating the pins and talking about the Connor Murphy t-shirts, and when they're talking about the girl who came in crying because she didn't have the opportunity to know Connor, because she came and she transferred after Connor had died, and just or just maybe after he was in a different grade, but I don't remember, but just not really knowing him, and then all these people just latching on to it. I feel like it's something we have in our society right now with certain causes, and even the mental health can be things. And like I said, when someone loses them, I have people very close to me who have lost people to suicide and self-harm and things like that. And I've seen how much it kind of hurts. I don't know a good way to say this, but I know that sometimes those people that are still there, it can be very hurtful to them to see others who didn't actually know that person creating this world. Because that's something in Dear Evan Hansen as a whole that we don't really address much. And I think it's one thing that makes it good why Evan and Zoe don't have like necessarily a happy ending at the end. What Evan did to Zoe is arguably one of the worst things ever, because Zoe had this relationship with Connor where he had been like physically abusive and threatening her life, and where she was scared for her life in these moments. And so in her head, she had all those feelings towards him. And then she's having Evan tell her how great of a guy he was, how happy, and then made to feel like Connor felt like if he was closer to her and could have connected to her, that maybe everything would have been okay. So probably dealing with some guilt there too. Like, man, if I would have tried to connect with him, reach out with him more, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So she is dealing with all of that Evan puts on her. So I'm very glad that they did not stay together after the news comes out. But like the emotional fucking terrorism essentially that Evan puts Zoe through is wild when you're dealing with that loss of someone in your family and all those complicated emotions. And it's a lot. So everything in this musical is very heavy subject matter. There are moments that you're laughing. Like Sincerely Me is a genuinely lighthearted, funny song that is so weird when you look at it. As this is what is happening in this song is they are faking emails from this kid who had just taken his own life, and this person who's trying to convince people that they were best friends. It is a fucked up premise to a song, but it is a light-hearted bop, and it will get stuck in your head. It is a earworm, and the staging is light-hearted, fun, and funny. The movie version too. The movie version was maybe the best song in the movie version because of how they had the different locales that they're filming it in. It was so good. I liked the choreography and everything in the movie version of that song. Great performances. But like I said, this musical deals with very heavy subject matter, so it might not be for everyone. But the soundtrack from Pasicum Hall is fantastic, and the performances by this cast on this touring company are also fantastic. Only one little thing that I would say, if you've seen pictures from this production, from Dear Evan Hansen as a whole, how it works, there are multimedia screens on stage that are constantly showing like social media posts, things like that. That's what serves as the background in a way. When they put these screens together on one, there's like 4x3 screens. So you can tell it's like basically 12 little pieces laid out. And some were intentionally staggered, like the different boards, so they're not going to line up perfectly across. However, in this 4x3 one panel, so it's made up of like 12 different panels, there were two that were obviously switched, that they had the wrong one in the wrong place because of how things were displaying on it. And I noticed it. during For Forever. And then I kept noticing it throughout the play, and it was driving me banana sandwich. So that's my one note. That's my one negative note from this. That's it. Everything else, though, I thought you may have your own different feelings about the musical as a whole. But this cast, this production was fantastic. The performances are fantastic. Good For You is one of the best songs in the show and should not have been cut from the movie. It is very powerful, very good. Highly recommend it. Go see the show if you have the opportunity to. It is worth it with this cast. And that's it. I don't have much else to say. That's where I'm going to leave you. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. So next week, tune in. Brad and I recorded a review of Hairspray, the 2007 movie version. So that will be coming out next week. Rayleigh and I are going to be recording Across the Universe and Rocky Horror Picture Show. We'll see when those episodes drop. I'm not quite sure the order they'll drop. I want to get Rocky Horror Picture Show in around Halloween for everyone. So stay tuned for that. Also be dropping a review of Back to the Future, the musical, when I see that touring production here in a few weeks. And then the month after that, I'll be seeing The Little Mermaid. So those are my next 3 Broadway touring company shows. So thank you all for listening. Hope you check out, like I said, go check out the review of Dear Evan Hansen movie that Rayleigh and I did last year. It's here on the pod channel. I'll link it in the description. Check out Hannah Bales' review of the movie as well on YouTube. Also fantastic. And then have a fantastic week. Have a fantastic, holy cow. Have a fantastic October. Have a fun Spooktober, spooky season. Get your horror movie watching in. If there's any other horror musicals that we should talk about on the podcast, I'm not tracking, let us know in the comments, DM us, interact, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching, listening. And don't forget to go down once more. Later.